Our second pre-Socratic among the Milesians is our good dead friend Anaximander, who lived from approximately 610 to 545 BC. He lived in Miletus and was possibly a student of Thales, and he wrote a book on the evolution of the world. Now, he accepted Thales' assumption that there is one fundamental thing or principle. But he had a question about Thales' view, which is this. Water is a particular thing, so how can it be the basis of other things? So, as Anaximander saw it, to claim that water is something that is not water would seem to be a contradiction. He also raised the concern about this, that water also seemed to be in need of explanation, which is a bit of battle about what can you take as a primitive, metaphysically take as something unexplained and unexamined, unanalyzed. So what was his solution? Well, his answer was this. He claimed that ultimate reality must be an eternal, imperishable source. And he kept with this notion of the apeiron, or apeiron. My pronunciation is, I admit, terrible, because I read far more than I talk. It is also known as the boundless, the infinite, the indefinite. It lacks internal boundaries and divisions. It's supposed to be a space-filling dynamic mass. It is infinite in time, indefinite in quantity, and according to him, is a reservoir from which emerge all things and qualities. But it lacks qualities itself. Why? Well, his claim is that if it had a quality, it could not produce the opposite quality, which is an interesting approach. So he takes it as being undefinable because it lacks qualities. Now it's interesting to compare this boundless, this infinite, the indefinite, with the Taoist concept of the Tao, which we'll talk about later in the course. Continuing with Anaximander, much like our good dead friend Thales, he also considered the problem of change. And he came up with this notion that the world is composed of warring opposites. He may not have been the first person to come up with this idea, but it is an idea that's still very popular today. So, if we take them to be opposites, according to Anaximander, they cannot arise from each other, but must arise from something more basic. So change would be, given this view, the qualities coming from and returning to the fundamental substance, this apeiron. So originally everything was this apeiron, or however it's pronounced, and creation short forth, according to him, the various qualities in a centrifugal motion. This gave the planets their motion and created the opposites. The combination of these qualities produce the individual objects in the world. For example, and he has little formulas for these. Cold plus wet equals earth and clouds. Hot plus dry equals a ring of fire that burst into smaller rings, which gave rise to the celestial objects. Warm plus wet equals life. So you have this notion of warring opposites. And again, this is something that sticks, and people still talk about today. And the notion of yin and yang, although they do not, war, strictly speaking, is, again, can be interestingly compared to his notions as well. So, what else did he do? Well, interestingly enough, he put forth an evolutionary theory in which he claimed all life came from the sea. Now, although Darwin is typically credited with being the evolution guy, he wasn't the first person to come up with this notion of evolution. What he did was lay out arguments for it and provide considerable proof. But the theory of evolution itself goes way, way back. He also looked at the question of what the Earth rests upon. We'll see in the future, sorry, spoiler alerts, that there's a a view that the Earth rests upon is held up by an elephant, which stands upon a giant turtle. But Anaximander came up with the interesting view that the Earth rests on nothing, which turned out to be correct. The Earth is in space. Now, whether he did this based on good reasons or lucky guess, we won't know. He did claim that the Earth was the center of a spherical universe, and this question is still an open one today. Is the Earth at the center of the universe? Maybe, maybe not. Is it spherical? Maybe, maybe not. Why is the Earth at the center? Well, he said there's no reason to go one way or another, so the Earth just stayed there. So he originates the concept that there is no absolute directions of up or down in the universe. And he claimed that the universe is an everlasting motion consisting of creation and destruction. And he does include a notion of moral force. And since the universe is on loan, from the source, justice requires that it be paid back. And so apparently, instead of Judgment Day, kind of jokingly, you would have Payback Day. And how that would pan out, well, I guess we'd all cease to exist, perhaps. So why is he important? Well, one reason is that his theory moves towards a more abstract way of thought. And this apeiron is not experienced empirically, but must be known by reason. He also began the process of philosophical criticism by going beyond his predecessor, which is something that is practiced to this day. He provided a more developed account of change, and his principle of justice provided an early version of an impersonal principle or natural law, rather than simply attributing things to the gods, which is an important change in terms of viewing the nature of the world.